Hey, good morning, Tim.
Good morning. How
Good
are
morning
you?
again. All right, who is winning?
Um, the United States, the law and the people are winning. That's over on my side of the planet. The people have spoken. The system works. That's
Hmm.
that's that's what's winning. We've been doing this since the 1770s, and
Hmm.
although we're stumbling in the dark, we seem to be doing it again and again. And so we're very interested. Nobody's happy. We have a lot of concessions that every single person is making. And I'm not just talking about COVID, I'm not just talking about the economy, but in political perception. We are all very political animals here. We are born and bred since first grade to be very politically minded, and so we're all a little concerned, but we're moving forward as a group. And we need this reminder every 4 years that although we're fractured and we're a bit dysfunctional, we're still operating as a family. And we still are. This is a good thing. And
Yeah,
what's your side of
I
the
following
planet
news here
like?
in India. Yeah, so I'm following news about your side of the planet more eagerly. And here in India, it says like it looks like Biden is winning. Biden will win, pretty close to the winning part. Is it true?
Um, okay. If you ask me what the color of the house is, I'm going to say the front of the house is white. Let me walk around the house and I'll tell you what the other color of the other sides of the house are. Okay. So we're about an 85 to a 90% comfortable with Biden being the next president. That's the best I can do. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty certain that we'll have Biden in the White House. Now, we don't know what that looks like. This current presidentship has a lot to do with drama and with showmanship. So we don't. It's going to be a televised show full of people throwing up their hands and crying and wringing their hands and asking the clouds and the sun, why, oh, why does this have to happen? And then it's going to be gone. And we're going to have another president. We're going to get back to work. I think we all need to get back to work.
Right.
And that's the deal.
But
Yeah.
tell me this, Tim, how far this is true? I heard that Trump is moving towards Supreme Court. Is there anything
Yes. I hate to say this.
cooking up?
Yeah. So again, in the spirit of P.T. Barnum, another wonderful United States entertainer, Trump has placed or has had placed
Hmm.
another person on the Supreme Court. So he assumes the Supreme Court in his back pocket. Okay. At the same time, I'm okay. First of all, let me step back. I am neither for one side or the other. I'm what you call an independent. I will not tell you how I feel. I'll tell you what the playing field looks like, okay? For
Hmm.
all of our viewers, don't yell at me, okay? I want everybody to understand I am an observer. I'm the person who pops popcorn for everybody while we sit back and watch. Now, that being said, um, one of the greatest articles I read about 4 days ago is while other people play checkers, while other people
Hmm.
play chess, um, uh, the what see the objective of Trump is not necessarily to come out on top. The objective on Trump is to put the greatest show on earth. Okay, you have to remember that. That
Mm-hmm.
is primarily true, and that's always been true since the 1980s. He has to be in the middle of the limelight, and it doesn't matter what the limelight is. Now, to look at the mechanics of going to the Supreme Court, there's probably 2 or 3 courts he has to go through. And in the middle of this, they have a bunch of people counting. They have a bunch of people watching the counters counting. They have a bunch of documentation that is backing this up. They have a bunch of data that's backing this up. So it's going to be very hard for him to fight. The last time we did this was what? Back with Al Gore in Florida and Bush. And they contested the Florida votes, and that fell through the bottom. Now, the wonderful thing about the Republicans is they can argue any side of the case. Now, and it's going to be very interesting because we have 2 parts of Congress. We have a House and we have a Senate. And the Senate are primarily on the Republican side. They have supported Trump all the way, carte blanche, against their whole policy. Even they've gone against what Republicans are traditionally for to support Trump, and they will not say anything against Trump. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Senate says in the next week. That's the next show, okay? And that's what Trump is going to set up. Now, if he does not have support by going in through the courts, he's going to start pressing people in the Senate to make a noise and do whatever it takes to keep him in the limelight. Because if he's not in the limelight, he's not doing his job for himself.
I see what it's saying. Yeah.
And it goes even further, because there's about 50 court cases in different states that are waiting for him. And there's a bunch of federal things going on. And the National Police Force, the Department of Justice, he placed somebody at the head who will not say no to him either. It's like an incredibly dysfunctional family with a child who's making decisions for the family every single day who will not say no. And so it's he can go out with the national police, he can go out with the Supreme Court, he can go out with the Senate, and if nothing else, we're going to see a wonderful show, and that's all. And then we're going to get our next president.
Wonderful. So everything goes fine, but I remember last time you mentioned it's going to take time, almost a month. Is it still true, or can we see the results a little sooner?
Actually, the results are 90 to 95% accurate. They're also about 90% complete. So there is not going to be any wiggle room for anybody to say, I actually won, you did not. It was very close. It was much closer than anybody expected. But at the same time, well, not everybody, but at the same time, there's a definite trend to who's going to be there. Now, what's going to take a lot of time is everybody has to get comfortable with this. The people who are really happy are going to be unhappy. The people who are really unhappy are going to see nothing's really changed. And at the same time, we have economic collapse, we have COVID, we have a problem with 28 million people out of work, we have problems with lack of health care and proper health care, and we have an education issue. We have all sorts of things going on that we have to solve while we're getting used to this old, new, old normal, because nothing is old. It's not going to be the way it was ever again. Our international policy and you'll see this in the next 6 months to 2 years. Our international policies are going to have to recover. We're going to have to start playing nice with the rest of the people on the planet, even though we're large and we can live on the food we make. A lot of our economy and a lot of our business is drawn internationally. And if we made a lot of our neighbors mad, they're not going to help us if we need help building our fences. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's going to be a couple years. And and then we have to figure out these big issues. Climate change, where are we? Housing, where are we? We have a lot of people moving on the continent from South and Central America up to North America. What are we going to do with that? If we are truly refined human beings here in the United States that we tell the rest of the world, how do we solve these problems, and how do we show other people to solve these problems? Not the way we're doing it. If thousands of years of humanity have shown us what we do is what brings a civilization down. It doesn't build it. It doesn't make a community. It destroys it. And so we're gonna have to figure this out. And we do. 1932, we had a problem. 19 just before the Spanish flu in 1918, we had a problem, and we've done this 4 or 5 times, but collectively we forget these things and nobody goes back to history. Yeah, Hubert Humphrey leaving the White House and FDR coming in was the last time we had this type of a show, this type of a dumpster fire.
But yeah, tell me this, Tim. It's not very often that we see that in states election we see violence, but this time we have seen that.
You know what? We were ready for it. We thought there was going to be a lot of violence, but there wasn't. Actually, it was surprising. We had a president in the White House that said, "Go over to the election places and make sure that everybody's doing right." And he was telling this to the common man. And you don't do that. We already have checks and balances in place, and we already have things that are being. And he was stirring up confusion and chaos because he wanted a show. And dear. So we were ready for anything. And in fact, he had fences put up around the White House because just of the chaos that he thought he was creating. And he was in there, and he was relatively quiet throughout the whole thing. At the same time, a lot of the states were really concerned. Everything went all right. Yeah, there were places where we had problems, but we are currently under a lot of political unrest for our issues, with too much violence, with controlling people who are breaking the law. We have problems with racism. We have problems with religious intolerance here, and we're not willing to admit it ourselves. And so we're not playing nice. And when we went rather nice through this, we were okay. Now, the South historically has problems with, suppressing voters and making sure that things go wrong. Now, we don't have any data. Okay, I want to say this. I'm gonna say we don't have any data for this, but there was evidence of a lot of robocalling, a lot of spam phone calls saying stay home because of COVID. I'd like to see the data on that and see how widespread that was before I start saying that, yeah, there was some nonsense going on. But just like when you were in grade school, I think that a lot of the fear mongering and just talking about it built it up larger than life. I'm one of those people that says, let's get the data, let's see what's really going on, and usually the monster is smaller
Mhm.
than what we think. How was that for an answer?
Oh yeah, no, that's very balanced. I,
I'm
I,
trying. I'm walking a wire here.
I can understand
But honestly,
that part, but
I'm relatively proud at
clear
how
enough.
we're
Yeah,
transitioning.
right. um, Good or bad, violence should not be in the elections. That's for sure. But if it is there, or if it has to be there, we need to see that how the future election is going to be. Part one. Coming back to the election in our country, which I said the same day we had election too, but that was a state where I belong to, Bihar, second phase of on the same day.
Mhm.
That's the 3rd of November. Yeah. So there the stuffs are really really interesting. I mean, uh, it's interesting or confusing. I would use a word confusing because, to be frank, it's like this. Can you imagine? Collisions, right? So unlike you, we have many party forum, right? So there
You,
you
I'm going to say something, Kumar.
uh
You have much more of a representative democracy than the United States has. It's wonderful to see the national parliament and all the different sides and all the political voices. Yes, it's confusing and it's frustrating and it's messy and it's wonderful. It really is.
all of the same,
It is.
all of the things at the same time, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah. But that's what it's supposed to be. That's what a democracy is. It's the voice of the people.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I totally agree with you. It's too many things actually adds up to the diversity. The diversity of the way you live and the way you communicate. It just shows up. So we can have a debate on, say, two-party system or a multi-party system is good or bad. I mean, we can have differences or different opinions there. But why I said here in India, the current election is confusing because uh, there's multi-party system, and so there is two major party uh, in the center, BJP. You know that we discussed about, right? And then the Congress. Um, the same way in states we have different regional parties, right? So here's the deal: in the center, the collision of BJP, and then there is an ally which is called LICSW. Are together in the center, okay?
Hmm.
But in the state election, they have differences. LJP and BJP is not fighting together. They are separated. You see, and the LJP support which is coming on the way is a way too different than what BJP is supporting. It's very very confusing. You need to actually come to India, stay for 5 years, and then you will
I would
understand the
love to.
complexity.
It's beautiful, and you know what? We have the same thing. It's glorious because we have states, and within the states we have
Uh-huh.
counties, and within the counties we have cities, and it's funny because at the county level, in the 1980s, we would have people voting for county commissioners places, and if the vote was too close, they actually have rules in the book that say you're going to play a card game and you're going to win that seat off of a single hand of a card game. And it's just if you're not emotionally involved in it, it's incredible entertainment. But the problem is, again, we're looking at people that we're putting in a place that are supposed to have higher morals and ethics than we do, that are going to do what they said they were going to do, and are going to have, the interests of not just their own people and their own personal interests in place, but they put the interests of the group higher. And that's where things break down. And it's easier to break down at the local level where, it's fun. It really is. I've always been involved in one way or another in community service or some type of government, and it's like I said, the only word for it is glorious. It's a mess. It's stinky and it's sloppy. It's just like a family together at a holiday. Everybody knows everybody's hot buttons. Everybody knows what the arguments are going to be. Everybody knows which person is going to break out in a fight, and we're just going to sit back and say, we're going to go through this once again, and we'll do it. It's fun if nobody gets hurt. If nobody gets hurt, it's
Right.
fun.
That's important. I was actually reading about robotics in the past few weeks, so it has become my one of my very favorite subject these days. Robotics, AI, ML. So I was reading about robotics, the three laws of robotics, right? So in that, it's very clearly written. The law number one is that a robot should uh, listen to the human orders. Law number one. Law number two, cannot harm human. Law number three, robots can protect themselves, but not at the cost of law number one and law number two.
The
You see
author
that?
who was the author that did that? Uh, Isaac Asimov. I think it was Isaac Asimov that put
Exactly.
those together, and it was brilliant. There was a great fear that robots were going to take over the world. And then, in your and my generation, it was artificial intelligence is going to take over the world. And we've been priming ourselves for this point. But what happens to humans? And this is where we get into the issue that you and I have just been talking about. The whole consideration of we're getting rid of these deep skills. And this is one of the things that I was talking about that we're struggling with in the United States. The deep skills are what we play for and that we prepare for in college and university. And these deep skills are the interesting things that we are proud of. I'm proud of my ability to work with databases in Excel. I'm proud of my ability to turn data to information, but at the same time, I know that in 10 or 15 years, that's going to be gone. And in the words of W.E. Deming, it's not that we're going to have chaos, in the workers and the workers being displaced. The workers are going to be irrelevant. We're going to be replaced even before we get into work if we continue down this skills focused activity. And this is where things get really scary. We're not just fighting being isolated. This isolation that we're talking with Mark Gorkin, and how
Mhm.
can we work with this? We're struggling with this whole thing. I don't have any meaning. If I go back to work, everything I've studied for the last 7 years is irrelevant. And that means I'm irrelevant. I'm talking to so many project managers who said, I have no meaning. There's no
Uh-huh.
reason for me to go back to work. And so this is adding to this sense that there's no place for me in the world. And how do I do this? Buckminster Fuller, back in the 50s and 60s, said, here's the recipe. Let's go back to our general skill set. Do not
Uh-huh.
be a deep skill person. Build your general skills so that you're ready for the general unknown, because things are going to change and they're going to change faster. Be able to turn on a dime whenever you can. Be ready to be responsive to everyone. be able to be responsive to the market and the company and the business, and realize that your success and your value is going to be not necessarily what you can contribute back to society, but how you respond to the changes in society. We're no longer workers in a factory. We're explorers and hunters. We're no longer farmers, okay? We have a very deep culture of being farmers here in the United States, and now we have to be hunters. We all have to be knowledge workers, and that's what a knowledge worker is. Inventors, entrepreneurs, and these type of behavior type activities. This is the major transition we're going through right now in the 21st century. This is what we're going to fight. And even without COVID, this would have caused immense struggle and churn. This is why I didn't keep my job, because knowledge workers are knowledge workers. They don't think, they don't act, they don't worry about corporations. Corporations don't last a lifetime of a human anymore. They used to last hundreds of years. They don't. Companies come and go. People live longer, and we have to plan to be a corporation of Tim and a corporation of Kumar for 50 to 75 years, instead of being, branded with the corporate logo here. This is the struggle that we need to solve. This is what we should be fighting around. How do I prepare myself, and how do I prepare my society for this major change? We got to be hunters. We have to solve big problems. And this is if I were an advisor to a leader, I'd say, okay, take everybody and point them at the biggest, meanest, hardest problem in society right now, and unleash them and say, if we don't do this, humanity goes away.
Right.
This
Humanity.
Yeah, the obstacle. If you have a common we talked about this on Tuesday, right? Or the week before. If everybody has something in common, we're no longer fighting each other. We're fighting that obstacle in common. And there are some things out there that we can fight together. Well,
welcome,
good
Mark.
morning. How are you doing?
I'm very busy this morning.
I bet you are.
Got a lot of stuff going on.
Good.
I have another webinar with one of your competitors, Kumar.
Oh.
At 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock. Ever hear of Ascent Global?
I have.
You know what? My mistake, though. Due to the daylight savings, the time has changed. It has gone an hour before. We didn't realize that, by the way, Tim. So we had to probably, if I'm saying 10 a.m. Eastern, then it's my time.
I've worked very closely with India in the last 6 or 7 years, and so a couple of my clocks at the house run India Standard Time, and it never changes. So Mark, it's a struggle twice a year.
I'm struggling with this sweater.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no,
right.
you're perfect. You're perfectly East Coast today, Mark. How are you doing, by the way?
I'm good. I almost finished with my treatments. So 4 more left.
Oh wow.
And they promised that when it stops, my hair's going to grow back. No. I didn't have hair before the treatments.
Oh dear. Yeah. I'm not far behind you. It's we're all boldly walking into the dark, aren't we, Mark? We were talking about the political environment and comparing the Bihar state voting with the voting of the United States. And it's fascinating to see how it's so divisive, and yet there seems to be a common voice that we're all rallying around.
I don't know. I think you're more optimistic than I am.
May I ask you this question, Mark? Who is winning?
Yeah. Who's winning?
I asked the same question to Tim.
Biden seems to be numerically a little bit ahead. And,
spoken like a true American.
Yeah.
Kumar, none of us will put our voices down. We'll bet on anything until the end of this.
Yeah, and even and then the way the election turned out, very little new is going to get done in the United States because it's a divided. There are three parts of the government, and the Senate is still Republican, and so they can check Biden even if he wins the election, and the House is Democratic. So, and the Supreme Court now is more leaning conservative. So it's a very divided government, and unless it will force, as Tim is saying, there'll be a few things that they can reach consensus on, in terms of new legislation. But anything, too progressive won't get the support of the components of government. So it's going to be status quo.
Has Trump already gone to Supreme Court? Has he already appealed?
I think he's starting to appeal.
Yeah, the appeals have gone to the state courts, and then the state level has their Supreme Courts, and they haven't taken that step yet. And then, only then, will it be able to go to the federal Supreme Court. So the whole court process could be going on for a while. And like Mark said, we're going to be making lots and lots of bowls of popcorn here.
I did hear that probably the only state that will has a chance of really going to the Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, is Pennsylvania, because of some changes they made in response to COVID in terms of their procedure, and that might be the only basis to really.
Pennsylvania this time has swiped, right? I mean, it has flipped, right?
No, it's not decided yet.
They voted for Trump
last time, yes.
And we don't know what the outcome is. And
we don't know the outcome.
And the Republicans actually asked to go to court over Pennsylvania even before the voting started. So that's the only reason that we have real confidence in saying that Pennsylvania and the results of Pennsylvania are going to be settled in court. Otherwise, we're not going to. And Mark, you remember Bush versus Gore in Florida, and it's. I don't think it'll get to that mess.
No, that's exactly. It looks like it won't. The only way it'll get to the mess that I've read is if not only is Pennsylvania critical as a state, but if the Pennsylvania vote is going to determine the election, then it will get to that mess. Because then you really literally turning over the presidency to the Supreme Court.
Right. So we have a few more decisions to be made before we think that this is a big thing here in the United States. And again, we have other things that we're worried about. In the next 2 months, we could lose a half again as many people as we've lost to COVID since January. In the next 2 months, the scientists and the
Is
leaders.
COVID? Yeah. Right. No, I was just asking. Is COVID a important talk in this election? I mean, the
Yeah.
entire election campaign was surrounded by what, Mark? If I have to ask that, was it
I think
unemployment or COVID situation?
I would think that the difference is the Republicans mostly try to focus on the economy. The Democrats mostly try to focus on COVID. And I think both were one-sided and short-sighted. The Democrats tried to ignore that, the economy is an important issue, and getting people, sort of involved in it.
I hate to say this, Mark. I really hate to say this, but it's like being over at Grandma's house on Thanksgiving. And a couple of the sisters are saying, well, Grandma has to go into a house. We have to get her coverage. We care and we love for Grandma. And two other sisters are saying, we can't afford it. That means we're going to have to move. We're all going to have to move into smaller homes. And nothing is different. I'm seeing that type of an argument. This is a very humanistic argument.
Yeah, it takes a little wisdom to see both sides of an issue, especially when you're passionate about your side.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. I was just, in the meantime, I was just reading the latest news around election. It says Trump 214, Biden 264. So
yeah. If he wins one more state, that's what it really comes down to. If Biden wins one of the states that are still undecided, he would be president.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nebraska. No, how is it showing up? It's going to do a split one.
That's a Republican state. That went
Republican. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. It's like you look at the map, the red and blue colors. It's just so striking.
Yeah, and there's two things going on. We have the glorious pageantry that the United States doesn't usually have. Every 4 years, we march out. We don't do it the way other countries do it. We do it in a very United States way. And at the same time, it's also gloriously humanistic and very messy. The issue is that we have been polarized for so long, and a lot of the decision making and the leadership has actually been around very single-sided decision making. And the problems that we're trying to solve right now are, like Mark said, they're not easy problems. They're not problems one side can solve. We have to get together and think together. And in the middle of this, we have people who are suffering. We have people who are scared. We have over 20 million people who are looking at the face of never having a job again. We're struggling in the newspapers, not just in our communities, but in the newspapers. We're struggling over, we can't afford health care. And we're supposed to be the ones who are showing the rest of the world how to live. And so it's frustrating. It really is. Now, I'd like to get back to what we wanted to talk about today, but
I like your questions, by the way, Tim.
Oh, by the way, they turned out. So let's actually turn the corner on this, and I think we can weave more of this into the conversation. So if you want to start us off, Kumar, we can at least touch on each one of these points, and I think we can cover them pretty deeply.
Yeah. Right. We're left with another 15 minutes, Tim and Mark. So I won't ask, I cannot ask a lot of questions, but what we can actually touch base is one vital question, and the rest we can repeat or we can continue this discussion next coming Thursday. for, right? But if you remember, Tim, we talked about the skills that is required to build the work environment once again. I mean, because I'm sure sooner or later this work environment will become, I mean, the offices will open. Let me put it that way. I myself gonna open the office in January 2021, starting, I mean, the first week. I mean, that's on the card as of now, until and unless something, drastic happens. But what I mean is basically once I open the office, or once the businesses starts opening, people starts coming in, what it's going to take to make the gap of 8 months, right? Wherein we saw depression, we saw issues, multiple issues, and where we went in isolation. All these things put together, how are we going to get freed and start working to the office, to the new office altogether, which is going to get open in 2021.
So we talked about this, and we talked about the mechanics, and we talked about business. What I'd like to talk with you about, Mark, just for a few minutes, is what do we have to do for the human side? Like what we were talking about just a few minutes ago with unrest and confusion. We're having unrest and confusion for a very specific reason. We're not getting information like we used to. We're not around water coolers anymore. We can't just walk out of our office and find out what's happened. So how are we going to actually operate? And there's two sides to this that we may want to explore. One, me as an individual, I need to stabilize myself. Number two, we as a group. And if I'm a leader, how do I get, my group to actually start feeling safe and comfortable? Let's take the individual first. And you had a really interesting structure that we were talking about early on. What are the things that I need to do that I can take action on right now to start actually thinking, if this is the way I'm going to be, I'm going to need to operate in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, first, I still think there's an important sort of a yin-yang symmetry between individual and group, or, a yin-yang connection. But let's start with what you're suggesting, Tim, and that is, what can the individual do? I think it's important to really try to be honest with yourself. How are you feeling? What's different now? When you wake up in the morning, are you having a hard time waking up? Are you feeling anxious? Are you excited? Where are you on that sort of wake up meter? And maybe another question: how many cups of coffee do you need to get going? No, but I think that kind of really, it starts with an individual self-assessment, and then sort of what you were also saying, Tim, is that we can then develop some skills and some practices. I was talking to a psychologist who readily admitted she has some hard time, and she, for her, that 1 minute meditation is very important. Just really centering herself. I, on the other hand, as a kind of a neurotic from New York, actually, I was thinking about this. One of the biggest achievements in my life is to learn how to handle my anxiety. Where my anxiety used to shut me down, where I was afraid to try something, or would back away, or, would fear failure. Through a lot of hard work and therapy and all whatever, and eventually learning to, jump into the water, and okay, now I'll find out if there are alligators in it, but learning to harness that anxiety. So when I wake up, I have a certain amount of angst, And I have a couple of choices. I can pull those covers way over my head and bury myself deeper, deeper, deeper to sort of numb the anxiety. Or I can feel it. No, it's a little, it's a little scary. It's a little, it's creating, this unrest, but that's it, unrest. I don't go back to sleep. I get out of bed. Okay, what am I going to do with this angst? How am I going to focus it? How am I going to harness it? How am I going to get to work and turn that anxiety into productive energy and take risks and confront the things that I really have to think about that are going to be a little tough and challenging. But you know what? Between the confidence I do have in my skills and this new potential source of energy, I'm really going to get down to work, as they say. And I'm going to, really attack things in a positive way. And that was the biggest change that I think, and looking back, that I went through in my life. Learning how to harness that anxiety.
It's an incredible skill. A lot of the smart guys in Western civilization has said one of the hardest things that you can learn is stepping in to your emotional voice and say, hold on a little bit. We have something called rationality, and let's figure these things out. Like you said, recognize the unrest and take action. That is a huge step. And the people that I've seen have taken the greatest progress in their life have been able to insert their rational minds and use their rational minds as a parent or as a mentor and be able to step in and say, you know what? That monster is a monster, but you know what? It came out of your head and you're bigger than that monster. And through doing this multiple times, you're proving to yourself, well, I've done it 20 out of 30 times. Maybe 2/3 of the time today I can do it. And that's what we call confidence. It's being able to predict future outcomes based on your past performance. And you and I talk about this, Mark, because we're on the other side of it. But still, it never gets easy.
No, and in fact, I need some of that tension to push me to a little bit. Okay, I can I got to work a little harder on this. And it is rational, but there's also an emotional part. First and foremost, we have to become more comfortable with our feelings. And one of the challenges is that in whether crisis situations, like someone suddenly having a heart attack in your family, or a broad socio-cultural crisis like the whole COVID experience, or suddenly losing a job, feelings, emotions are going to get stirred up. But what really is the challenge is not only present emotions are getting stirred up, but memories from the past are getting stirred up. So it's like you're being hit from, bombarded from two sides, and the side of the past, you're not even aware that it's happening fully.
Right.
And I think I told you, 9/11, a good friend who's got was a military captain in Vietnam, and got a doctor in computer sciences, all the rational, sort of courageous skills you would want to see in a person. And after 9/11, a week after, he was still shook and he couldn't understand it. When I finally recalled, and I said to him, John, didn't your wife die in a house fire, and you had tried to go in and save her and you weren't successful? Isn't there a parallel between what happened when those planes flew into the Twin Towers? And he suddenly looked at me and said, wow, I had never thought of that. So on an unconscious level, when in times of crisis, the challenge isn't what's immediately in front of you. The challenge is what's living inside you as well. And we need to be able to integrate the two.
And we need to understand this is perfectly human. This is
Yes.
normal. This is not something that, this is not an affliction. This is the way the human mind functions.
You know why that's so important, Tim, is because in my work in crisis intervention, people really think, why am I thinking about my dead grandmother? It's like I'm going crazy. No, this is what happens in times of crisis. This is very, as Tim said, it's very natural and human.
And this is to get back what we were talking about. A crisis can be a car wreck, but a crisis can also be a slow, grinding sense of misery and isolation. And we forget this. Crisis is not just something that, the car hits the wall. Crisis is waking up day after day and realizing I am disconnected from my support group.
I'm going to just make a slight tweak. Crisis by definition is time limited. But what can happen if we don't deal with the crisis, we have what you're describing, Tim, is a chronic condition.
There we go. Okay, thank you for that. Perfect. Yeah. And the problem is, this is what we're dealing with as a society right now. It's not just the crisis that we see. It's not just the risk that we are going to hurt, by the decision making we're making. We have a chance of hurting more and more people. But it's that chronic having to carry the weight of this negative environment that actually wears us down.
Weight and being hypervigilant. Chronic hypervigilance, where you're always feeling like you're looking behind your back. Something's coming, catching up to me. That's what really leads to, the cortisol, all the physiological hormones that create mind-body symptoms and ultimately illnesses. So this kind of chronic hypervigilance, if we don't address it and we don't deal with the crisis immediately, and then we don't deal with what's becoming chronic, you can expect people are going to burn out, break down. And you know what? We talked, Tim, he said individuals, teams, you can expect the same thing from the team. And chances are, in the long run, you can expect the same thing from, to some degree for the organization. Because all three, individual, team, organization, they're all interwoven.
We're running out of time here, so let's actually talk about this and talk about where this can lead us next time, because it's really interesting. This hypervigilance is something that you can mechanically measure. It's a metric. It's quantifiable. You can understand my behaviors when I'm hypervigilant. You can understand other people's behaviors, and with this metric, I can actually remind myself, okay, let me do an inventory, let me do an inspection, and I can do this as an individual. It says, oh, this is the result of being under chronic stress. And I can say chronic stress, okay, this is caused generally by continually being under crisis. And we can understand this.
Feeling out of control.
Exactly.
That's probably if there's one phrase that captures, a source of chronic stress.
Yeah.
Is when we're out of control.
And as a leader, there's three things you must give people. You must give them a sense of safety. You must give them a little bit of control. And you must give them an opportunity to feel at the end of the day that they're fulfilled. They have some sense of I matter. And if you can do that and create that environment as a business person, you have an opportunity for a team to grow. And as an individual, I've used this as an individual too. if I can have every day where I can create a little safety zone where I have, I have a little control over this, and I got a little bit of work done. And as an entrepreneur, I had to mechanically build this into my days.
And what you and I have talked about, it's, as I call it, really, can I create purpose and passion?
Mm-hmm.
That's,
Yep. And the passion is the emotional part. And the emotions, even though we think they get in the way, they're the energy. They are the drivers. They're the gasoline that help us move forward. I care. And that's only because I care am I able to take one more step than I thought I could. Only when I care do I feel like passing the finish line is meaningful.
Someone also said the importance of constructive discontent. And that, I guess, could be a very good motivator for caring. Hey, we can do this better. Something doesn't feel right. Am I willing to speak up, even though I'm the only one that's sensing this right now? But that's leadership. Speaking up and sharing your point of view when everyone else is just sort of cruising along. And hey, we can do this better.
A leader is not just somebody at the top of the food chain. A leader is somebody who exerts a certain amount and type of behavior. It's anybody can be a leader, and if you want to have the life that you desire, you lead yourself. If you want to have the family you desire, you lead the family. And it's not just the family. It's not just the parents that lead. It's everybody participates in that aspect of leadership. Interesting.
Well, as a father and leader and husband, what do you think about all this, Mr. Kumar?
This is way too beyond my jurisdiction, I believe. I mean, it's above my level.
No, come on. You. What's the connection of leadership for you as a leader of a business, as a father in a family, as a husband? What are the threads of leadership that you see in all those three roles?
No, I mean, getting failed or failure is always a challenge out there, which you have to keep in mind. I mean, it could be any role that you're playing in my life, right? That fear of, you, for example, a father, right? Taking decisions for the family, for the kids, for the wife, right? What if that decision goes in a different direction? It doesn't do what was supposed to do, right? So that fear is there. The simpleness as well. I've taken some hard decisions, some soft decisions, right, for the businesses. What if those decisions doesn't turn out to be the way I thought, right? Things will actually tumble up. So that's the only thing that keeps me thinking. Otherwise, I don't care about anything.
So
neither in the
have you
personal
ever
life.
have you ever made a decision that you thought was not correct in hindsight? And what did you do about that? Because we can't be perfect. We're gonna make mistakes.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I said this, that the fear is always there, I also meant is basically you be prepared for failure, right?
Okay.
You have to be prepared for the failure. Your winning chance, and I always do that calculation. I do that. So my winning chance on any decision that I take, I always keep it at the 30%. I prepare myself for the rest 70% as a failure. What if it's going to fail? Let's consider 70% of failure part and prepare for that.
Not afraid to contemplate failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very important. It's about taking risk, isn't it? I mean, every decisions that you take, it has a risk element intact. Now, the only thing is, if you don't take risk, you're not going to move.
That's right. You don't grow. You don't take risk. Eventually, you just become a statue.
Exactly. Gentlemen, I'm at the end of my time. I'm going to have to bow out. Kumar and Mark, it's a pleasure to talk with both of you. In the meantime, let's continue this discussion and see where it leads
Did
us.
we tape this at all today? Or would this
Yes.
Yeah.
because I thought this was great today.
Yes, it's brilliant, and it leads us up to the next question. And I have some more questions for you, Mark, and let's go ahead and continue this. I took some notes so that we can easily step into this conversation next week as well,
We
or
shall. What
whenever
I
you're
suggest.
available.
Yeah. My suggestion is let's circle in again on Thursday, and this time 8:30 India time is good. I don't know, Tim. What's
10
your
o'clock
time?
is good for me.
Are you
o'clock.
7:30 India time or 8:30 India time? What suits you better?
I'm 8 in the morning. I'm in Mountain Time. So this is a good time. 7 in the morning, which is 9 o'clock in the morning, Mark's time, is perfect. And let's continue this discussion.
So which one are we choosing? 7 or 8 Mountain Time?
I think 7 is the better for me, and that puts you at 9 in the morning.
Okay, so remind me, because I'm used to 10 o'clock. We've been doing it at 10.
Right.
All right.
So now you want to do it at 9.
Yeah. We will talk about this and make sure that we have this perfectly timed. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think
Already.
it does lead just right into, because I think what we're really on the verge of is talking about, because of this crisis, what do organizations and companies need to do differently to really respond to these workers under stress, whether they're, isolated, or, as you said, or Tim said, going back into a work. Well, you were saying, Kumar, what happens in January if I tell my employees we're going back into the office? What's going to happen after this 8-month delay? And it's not just an 8-month delay, because it's also within the context of this whole COVID thing. How are we going to be safe in the office? How are we going to social distance? Are people going to feel a little awkward, not being able to give each other a hug, or, really get up and close and personal around the water cooler? Yeah. All these things, I think, are going to ultimately require a different kind of intervention from, companies and organizations and their leaders. And that's what I think,
Right.
Tim and I have been, sort of talking about, during the week. And I think we have some ideas and a plan that's going to present something that's a little bit different that most organizations are experiencing. And I think that's
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what I mean is basically, let's circle in it. This is very important, and I don't want to lose it in between. So we need to complete this discussion, though it's lengthy. But let's spend good time on it. Let's circle in again next Thursday, 7 Mountain Time, and that's 7:30 India time, evening, and continue our discussions. These are vital things I told you about. By the way, just to leave you with this thought, when I actually discussed this with my team, it has a divided opinions. So, yeah.
Well, I want to hear about those divided opinions. That's exactly, you're the ground level researcher for us, Kumar. You've got to talk to me. Yeah. I want to hear exactly what's going on with you and your team.
Right.
This is brilliant.
So, I mean, let's connect it because this will switch off.
So what I'm saying is, I don't want you just sitting back and looking pretty,
No, so I wanted you to, leave this meeting with this thought, because this is what we have to answer. I told you it's a divided opinion. Half of the team wants to get inside, half of the team wants to stay home, work in. Now, as a business, what is better, we have to decide. Like we discussed about the decisions, right? We have to take. We can discuss this. We have to discuss this.
Good.
All right.
Great.
Good. Thanks again, everyone, and we will.
Can you send me a link of this little discussion?
Oh yes. yeah, absolutely.
We'll have it. If you post it, or if you don't post it, but I would like to see it. I'd like to share it with some people.
I'll tell subscribe to I'll tell you what, and to all the viewers out there, you should subscribe to our channel, which is Facebook, Ijona Academy or Ijona Services, and just subscribe the button, and you will have automatically the links and the videos, whatever we make it live, as a notification.
Yeah,
I'll send you.
we'll send out the link for anybody too. That's great. We'll get it to you, Mark. Brilliant. Thanks again, everyone. I do need to take off, and we will have another round of interesting discussions for everyone. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Kumar. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, people. Enjoy the day.